2, 1.
Good afternoon. This is Jim Eskin on behalf of Eskin Fundraising Training. It's my pleasure to welcome you to number 31 in our nonprofit and webinar series. Our topic is the 10 Truths of Fundraising's New Frontier. We have one little change in the lineup. For the first 30 shows, our producer was John Largent, CEO of Game Day Media. We have someone, a chip off the old block. We have Michael Largent, who's a project manager. Welcome, Michael. Can you take a second to explain the logistics and how people can type in questions?
Sure thing. So if you guys have any questions that come up while you're listening to the webinar, you'll have two options. You can either type them in the chat, and then I'll read them out later on in the presentation, or you can raise your hand, which is just one of the options on the participants list, and then we'll actually drag you in so that you can ask the question verbally. So those are your two options for questions.
And by the way, I would prefer the section options. That we'd like to have you on the screen with us and share it verbally. I'm going to start with a question for our audience. The lovely lady in the center, today is her birthday. I want you to type in her age. Are we getting some responses, Michael?
I haven't seen any yet. 88, that's the first guess.
Well,
106.
That's better. Actually, the answer is 110. This is Erlene Hart Andrews, who today is celebrating her 110th birthday. She voted last week. She is the known oldest voter in the state of Texas. She was actually born in 1910 before women could vote, and she hasn't missed an election since she's been able to vote. I'm going to pick on Aaron. Who was president of the United States in 1910?
That would be Taft, is that correct?
William Howard Taft. And now let's push you a little more, and then we actually will get the fundraising. What was his distinction among the 45 presidents?
Well, there was a couple things. I know his wife helped him out, but I was actually thinking that he was one of the larger presidents that we've had.
You're right on target. He was the largest president. He tipped the scales at 112 pounds, and he once actually got stuck in the White House bathtub. Today, I'm gonna have to come out and expose myself. I'm a slideaholic. We're gonna show a lot of slides, get Aaron into this discussion. What we wanna do is acquaint you with the current giving landscape. I wanna share 10 truths that I say mix our tested and proven principles and strategies and best practices and fit them into today's socially distanced realities. And then, of course, I'm a frustrated professor. We're going to give you some homework, things you can do back at the office to raise some money. I'm calling this Fundraising's New Frontier because when Aaron and I were brought up in the industry and we helped teach it, the gold standard was face-to-face meetings, particularly asking for major gifts. And you did, toughest time sometimes was just getting the face-to-face time. And now, because of the world we're in social distancing, we are going to something even a year ago we never talked about. We are asking for money virtually. And Aaron, we're actually seeing results of 5, 6, 7-figure gifts being made virtually. So this is a time in which there's a lot more that we don't know than we do know.
Yeah.
And we're going to talk about, when we talk about the 10 truths, we got to use technology, but we should also never forget the human touch. That usually what results in the personal connection. And we like to think too, we're not taking, Aaron, we're not taking things away from donors. We're giving them another way to feel great. A little point of background. I'm formed Eskin Fundraising Training in June of 2018. During my career, I had the opportunity to work with 3 higher education institutions and work with absolutely fearless community and business leaders who were scared of everything, who were unscared of everything in the world with the exception of asking for a gift. So we declared war on the fear of asking and felt we as practitioners needed to do a better job of demystifying the art and science of fundraising. We're welcome to work with a broad range of nonprofits, different sizes, different sectors. You're our type of people because I am firmly convinced that nonprofits bring out the best in people. And, you know, a lot of people said they can't ask for a gift. We like to say that with a little training, and if they bring the passion and the Jeffersonian virtues of a knowing head and an honest heart, well, they can be great fundraisers. This is the series we have planned for the remainder of the year. We're only going to skip one Wednesday. That's next week after the election. We think that people are going to be overwhelmed with attention on that. But we're going to have a fun night right before Thanksgiving. We just decided we're going to have a nonprofit open mic night, and you can ask a question. You can tell about your organization, and I'm going to call on you with me to help answer the questions. We're proud to put out a monthly newsletter. We want to make sure you're on our mailing list. So what we're going to do, we're going to send out a very short written summary on LinkedIn and Facebook right after this show. And then Michael Margent does a magic spin cycle, and we plan to post the tape and the recording somewhere between 6 and 6:15. I was proud to write my first fundraising book, 10 Simple Lessons. And guess what? You know, a lot has changed since those 10 simple lessons. But if you ever heard of the country song, the name is I Like Country Before Country Was Cool. Aaron Javina formed Virtual Fundraising Consultants in 2013. He liked virtual fundraising before it was cool. And he's also the current president of the AFP San Antonio chapter. So thank you for your leadership. Tell us a little something about virtual fundraising consultants.
Absolutely. Well, as you might guess, this is a busy time because a lot of nonprofits are trying to transition into virtual events. I guess if I could simplify it, at Virtual Fundraising Consultants, we help nonprofits with limited time, limited resources, and limited money raise more money virtually. And that's it, Jim. I mean, it's taking the traditional principles of fundraising and bringing them into a virtual world and raising more money for nonprofits.
Well, we got to learn from you because you got 7 years of practice. And maybe I know it's a busy time for AFP. We just had a regional conference. We're setting up new board and officer teams. Tell us maybe for a moment how fundraisers can help each other.
Absolutely. So, Jim, you know, this is an unprecedented time. We have nonprofits that are experiencing things that they've never experienced before. One of the things that I think is really beneficial about being here in San Antonio and being in the nonprofit community in other areas is the fact that you can reach out to other nonprofits for advice and also to share with them what you're struggling with. And the benefit of that, of sharing with other people some things that you may be stuck on is you're probably not alone. And there's other people that are looking at that as well. And also they can hopefully provide support for you and guidance and can help you navigate through this time of uncertainty. So I would say, you know, this is a time for us to build relationships with donors and also relationships with other fundraising professionals and nonprofits.
Well put. And again, thank you for your service and leadership to our chapter, because you will say when nonprofits do well, we all do well. And I don't care if you're the board chair, you're the CEO, you're the director of development, you're the receptionist, the computer analyst, each and every day a volunteer, you prove that one person in the nonprofit sector can make a difference because every day you're touching, improving, and saving more lives. Everyone, we like to say that before COVID-19, nonprofits were more essential. But guess what? They are more essential than ever. So we have started a little tradition. Can everybody type in the words nonprofit strong? By the way, Aaron, what are we?
We are nonprofit strong, Jim.
Okay, we sure are. Okay. Folks, buckle your seatbelts. We're going to move kind of quickly here. I want to start first on some very positive news, and that has to do with the generosity of the American people. Philanthropy is doing just fine. Aaron and I were excited. Their AFP is the umbrella for something called the Fundraising Effectiveness Project. And it showed for the first half of 2020, giving was 7.5% over the pace of last year. And guess what? A lot of those gifts were from people making gifts of $250 or less. We're going to talk about donor advised funds. I mean, there's something like $121 billion residing there. And there's just a lot of money out there. And of course, the number one predictor is not having a good week, but during this time, it's done very well. The philanthropy usually follows the stock market. And we've had leadership gifts from people who never are given at that size before. So last year, American philanthropy totaled $450 billion. And guess what? It is actually responding better to COVID than it did to the recession of 08 and 09. And by the way, Giving USA has been tracking data for like 60, 65 years. And the numbers have changed, but where the money comes from hasn't. And you see there close to 70% comes from individuals, okay? This shows where the money goes. It hasn't changed too much. Religion gets the biggest cut of the pie, followed by education, and everything else is pretty much kicked down. The keynote speaker at the AFP Regional Conference was Laura Fredericks. And she has written, I think now with the passage of Gerald Panis, she is the best known fundraising authority on the planet. And she reminds us that everything we want for in life, we ask, and that includes nonprofits. And my good friend, Marv Leroy, who's the founder of the Institute for the Excellence, reminds us that we're not just raising money to raise money. We're raising money to touch, improve, and save lives, okay? Because more money equals more mission. And I'll tell you what, we know from the beginning, and we're going to talk about the difference now, that nonprofits are built on relationships. And you really simplify it. One of my favorite friends from the communications world is Lionel Sousa. And he's made 3 presentations, either live or via the webinar for us. And he says, our job's not that complicated. It's to get the donor to know, like, and trust us, okay? There are 1.5 million nonprofits in the country. Aaron, guess how many are in the state of Texas?
There are a lot. I know, isn't it, Jim? Just here in San Antonio, isn't there like over 6,000 just in San Antonio? Is that correct?
Yeah, I owe you a chocolate chip cookie. You are exactly right. And the point is, and most of these are small, as you can see, the overwhelming majority have revenues under $500,000. And by the way, too, it's not all that being small. I think Aaron, I can say we're fairly modest entrepreneurs. That means you can turn on a dime, and that can be a real advantage. And now let's start our 10 truths, okay? And I'm going to ask Aaron to come in when he pleases for color. I think the first thing that boards and staff and donors want to get together and look at their mission. You know, everything you do starts and ends with mission. And you should ask yourself, I mean, number one, how do you stand out? What can you say that 1.5 million other nonprofits in the country can say? And I think now, too, the donors are going to want to know, how can you address the crisis of COVID-19? And so your board and staff and volunteers should visit that issue. We're talking about some things change, some things haven't. And the mechanics of fundraising really are the same. We just have to do it in a different way. I mean, the first step is identifying prospects. And Aaron, I like a little formula. It's not Central Intelligence Agency. It's called capacity, inclination, and access. That you want to, people still think, you know, who has the financial wherewithal to make a gift? Are they philanthropic? Okay, even if they do have resources, why should they be interested in your nonprofit? Okay. And finally, the toughest part, even if you establish capacity and inclination, how are you going to get to them?
Yeah.
The second part is so key, because remember, if you're a donor, you're not deciding between the good and the bad. You're deciding between the good and the good, that you want to spend more time. Before it was face to face, now it's going to be virtually, because we have this law in the fundraising jungle. The more time you spend with donors, the more money you're going to raise. And then the obvious part is solicitation, and that's setting the stage for who, what, when is going to ask. And really, Aaron and I have been doing this most of our lives. The solicitation is really not that complex. You tell briefly the need, and then you look the donor in the eyes and you ask for their help. And you always ask, not for an open, but a specific amount for a specific purpose. And then you do what sometimes seems like the longest pause in the world. You will remain absolutely silent until they respond. Now that's the same, except now we're doing it virtually. We're going to talk a little more about that. And finally, stewardship is one of those right and smart things to do, because there's a rule of thumb that every gift, whether it's for $100 or $1 million, should be thanked and recognized 7 times during the year. Because we're going to go back to Aaron, who gave us a gift this year, and we're going to ask them to consider a gift next year and to consider increasing the amount of that gift. But we're saying COVID has made a huge, and social distancing has made a huge change in the way we do business. I don't know how long, Aaron. I think shaking the hands on a deal must be, I don't know, 300 or 400 years old.
Oh my goodness. It seems like, Jim, that's that's how I was taught from the beginning, right? Is the handshakes. And
I got a feeling our parents and grandparents were taught on that too,
yeah,
and
absolutely.
the handshake has been so much a part of the way we do business. But guess what, folks? We don't know when we're going to shake hands again. And so again, that's why virtual fundraising has stepped in, and we are learning fundraisers, as well as anyone, can do their jobs effectively from home, because we are allowing on the virtual technology that's giving us that personal connection. Another point, I once watched this movie, and Aaron, you know how it defined a relationship?
How to define it, a relationship?
It said a relationship is something you have until something better comes along. And so I think in fundraising, really, our job is not a relationship. It's fact, not even a friendship. It's family.
So, Jim, I was going to say real
please.
quick, the way I define that would be is if the relationship is whether they'll pick up the phone when you call. And I know that sounds pretty simple too, but
I like that one.
That's a good indicator.
No, it sure is. It sure is. And by the way, I'm almost thinking that we should now treat our donors like family. What are you doing? You're calling family members in other parts of the country. You're asking how they're doing. You're telling what you're doing. You ask them if there's any way you can help. I think, and Aaron, we were talking about this before, this is a great time to deepen relationships with donors because they're home, and to use video chat, email, smoke screens, whatever, but to deepen your relationships.
Well, and Jim, there's something to be said about picking up the phone and calling one of your donors and just asking the simple question, how are you doing? And listening, especially during COVID, and they'll remember that. So
give me a fist bump. Give me a fist bump. That's a great point. And also asking, hey, is there anything we can do for you?
Absolutely.
I'm saying too that, there are 1.5 million nonprofits, and we're all in it for the same reason, to increase the common good. If there was ever a time to collaborate, and there's so many ways that we can gain efficiency, AFP is a good example. Collaborate with other people in the nonprofit sector. You win, they win, but more importantly, the people we serve in our missions win. This is a time to collaborate like we've never done before. This is just a fact of life, folks. If you're sitting on top of, say, $50 million, that sounds like a nice sum of money, doesn't it, Aaron?
Absolutely. I'll take it.
I'll take it too. But I don't know how you can spend it more luxuriously than if you had 25 million. Are you going to take a trip? I don't know. Are you going to go out and entertain? I don't know. Are you going to buy fancy clothes? Well, who are you going to show it off to? But actually, one of the things that Laura Fredericks emphasized, during her regional conference keynote, that for high wealth people, one of the things they can control is providing help. They can't spend more money on food. They can't have big parties, but they can help people in need who have never needed it so much. Okay. One of the things, too, it's probably the most dynamic component of American philanthropy is donor advised funds. Okay. And you probably have heard Fidelity has one, Charles Schwab, a lot of community foundations. And this is definitely just last year, I think Fidelity last year awarded $7.3 billion in DFA grants, and they have been exploding. Okay. And just the other day, the Lilly School released a study and said that those nonprofits that were discussing DAFs with their donor friends were 87% more likely to get a DAF gift. So go out and check DAFs. It is by far the most dynamic and growing part of philanthropy. We were talking before that, oh man, there's a lot of being asked to the computer and Zoom and WebEx and all the other digital tools. Aaron, I like giving people the option. If I'm meeting you the first time, I want to make that a Zoom call, But I think if we have Zoomed 6 to 7 times and we know each other well, I'm always giving the donor the choice. How would you like to communicate? I'd be glad to set up a video chat. I'd be glad just to have a telephone call. And you know what I'm hearing? Sometimes they're going for the telephone call. You don't have to put your makeup on, stuff like that.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, Jim. I've actually noticed the trend for that too, that there are a substantial amount of major donors that are actually okay with and actually prefer a phone call. So I think it's finding that balance, right?
Right. I think after you establish the personal connection through video, then you have some more options. And by the way, too, we're seeing an uptick in volunteering. And so a lot of it's done being virtually. But I'll tell you an exception. We're going to feature in a couple of weeks our friends from Big Brothers and Big Sisters. They're dealing with mentoring at-risk kids. They have set up socially distanced environment to continue that. Volunteering is thriving too. So be sure to talk to your donors about that. This is one I believe in very, very deeply. I think before we put people on a board and they might have been told, if you could raise some money, that would be great. But there's always Aaron to raise the money. They were given an option. Well, I don't think we have a board seat to waste. And I think, again, remember, we're going to talk a little about it. There's a lot of ways a board member and volunteer can contribute mightily to a gift without asking. They can help in those other phases of discovery, cultivation, and stewardship. And
Jim,
finally,
I was going to say that's a great point. Sometimes you hear people ask the question, how big should your board be? And I always go back to them and I always say, well, how big of a board can you manage and have them being engaged and effective? And I think really, sometimes it boils down to how engaged your board is, right? And so it's all about that engagement and getting involved.
Aaron, I love that word, engagement. Okay, now this is the 10 truth is don't take your feet off the gas pedal. Jim and Aaron are going to give you some homework assignments, and I promise it will produce money for you, okay? I'll give you Aaron's home address, knock on his door if it doesn't produce money for you. But green lights are flashing. First of all, something I've learned, I got more gray hair than Aaron. There's no such thing as perfect. Whatever your initiative is, you're better to just ramp it up, getting in motion, and don't wait. There is never a perfect time to ask or do a program, okay? The wrong time is not to do it at all. So the big thing is look at your different initiatives and talk about how do we get them moving forward. One of the initiatives, 2 weeks ago, we had Erica Wasdorp on, who is considered the first lady of monthly giving. And this is a program that she wrote the first book on monthly giving called Monthly Giving, the Sleeping Giant. It's open to nonprofits of all size. The costs are very minimal. And guess what, Aaron? A big job is retaining your donors, and monthly donors are double as likely to retain their gifting to your nonprofit. And they're 6 times more likely to include your nonprofit in their estates. Everyone, take a closer looking. If you got monthly giving going, ramp it up. If you don't have it going, it's time to, again, not start perfectly, just start, because there's such an upside and the cost is almost nil. Aaron, I'm going to inject some of my own opinion here. You know, we're talking about the virtual world and technology.
Yeah.
I went during my fundraising career, and now I'm a nut, and my wife will tell you I'm a nut, in writing handwritten notes, even in this virtual time. And I'll tell you why. We had, you know how many emails are sent every minute? 150,000. The typical office worker receives 121 each day. How many handwritten notes do you get? So I am asking each of our nonprofits to write one handwritten note a day to either a current donor or a prospective donor. It doesn't have to be long, about 3 lines. I'm going to tell you, it's going to stand out because they get a lot of email, they get a lot of video chats, they don't get many handwritten notes, okay? At the same time, too, they're more at home. So it's more likely that you can reach them through your cell phone, for the what's a landline? Okay, through a landline or a video chat. And so we're talking about mixing, you know, high tech, high touch. Can send them a handwritten note, but check in on them. How are they doing? Remember, treat them like family. Is there anything you can do to help them? Okay. Another thing we're seeing, and Aaron, I'm going to bring you in. We're seeing, I've always, as executive director, loved unrestricted gifts. And we're seeing a lot of foundations and other founders kind of relax the guidelines. And do you have any suggestions on how nonprofits can ask for unrestricted gifts?
Well, so Jim, it's interesting you say that, but sometimes I think that nonprofits set themselves up for restricted gifts because when they apply for grants, they narrow their focus so much that they're asking for restricted gifts. So I think the first thing to think about is just ask for more unrestricted gifts. And when you're writing a grant, if they allow you to just ask for unrestricted funds, ask for unrestricted funds. I know that sounds pretty simplistic, but I think that's definitely one thing that you can do. And also, I think it boils down to just helping the donor understand the need for unrestricted gifts, right?
And I always, you know, my 30 years always felt that one unrestricted dollar was worth 2 restricted dollars. And, you know, particularly now, you know, when you have to be so nimble and you have to pivot, they've never been so important. This is a good time, and Aaron and I are a little biased in this subject. I'm not just talking your professional staff, but as I said, you don't have a board seat to waste, and I think this is a great time to mentor and tutor your board members to be more comfortable. Again, they don't have to ask, but they can help identify prospects, they can introduce them to your nonprofit, and they certainly can thank them. Aaron, you want to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I agree 100%. You know, I think that every fundraiser and every nonprofit executive needs a consultant or needs a coach or needs a mentor. And, you know, those individuals, they can help you to work through things that and give you new ideas and fresh perspectives that you may not have thought possible.
Now, we know a lot of nonprofits have depended on annual galas and luncheons and special events, and it's been tough. But we're seeing wonderful results from virtual events. Number one, your costs go down to nearly nothing. we're ever seeing results from phantom events. And let's face it, most people, they don't go to your event to buy the rubber chick or to enjoy the rubber chicken. They want to support your mission and champion your cause. But we're actually seeing virtual events net more money now, Aaron.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, Jim, it's a transition for sure, but there are some significant benefits to doing a good virtual event. You know, you can raise more money, and if done properly, you can engage your volunteers as well, and maybe even better than you could with a regular event. I think it's a win-win. I think it just requires having a good mindset and taking the time and the energy needed to transition.
Very good. Another thing we're seeing a dramatic increase is in the writing of estate plans. Right now, fewer than 1/3 of the Americans have wills, but I think there's an organization called Free Will, and during the first quarter of the year, they experienced a 400% increase on their website. And that's because, let's be blunt, people are realizing their own mortality and the fickleness of predicting the future. And so one of the greatest ways, some of the biggest endowments are built through estate gifts. Typically, you know, someone can give 7 to 10 times as much through their estate as they can through their income. And, you know, people say, oh, that's real complicated. It really gets down to the big three, probably between charitable bequests, retirement plans, and life insurance policies. That's about 90% of the plan given volume in America.
Well, and Jim, I would just add to that I think sometimes small nonprofits, they get overwhelmed with this idea of asking for estate gifts, and start small. You know, sometimes it's as simple as just getting out there and putting information about being able to put that nonprofit in their will. And if you're consistent over a period of time and start building a plan, you can raise a substantial amount of money.
And make that person a hero on your website.
Absolutely.
Here's another, you know, most of our donors, is just a fact, tend to be older, okay? And, you know, 30 years ago, I would have given you a different definition of older. And some aren't fully familiar with the new video conferencing. And I know development officers that, number one, they're teaching their donor, they're holding their hands, helping them install the software so they can do video conferencing, which improves the relationship with the nonprofit. But for your senior donor, they can be in better contact with family members around the country. That's a way a development officer can really be of assistance to their older donors. Another thing, you got your board members, you know, who say they might be reluctant to ask a gift. The best way I have found to get board members kind of get their feet wet, you know, in a cold pond with fundraising, is simply making a thank you call. Penelope Burke has done research and said this one practice drives up income as much as anything. And by the way, you know, a lot of times what happens when you make a phone call, Aaron? You get a voicemail message.
Yeah,
right?
I was going to say a lot of them are voicemail, but you know what? I also feel like voicemails can be effective as well. Just knowing that someone called and someone cares.
Right, particularly a board member. They're not paid to do that. And you know what's nice about a voicemail? Somebody can replay a voicemail, you know. Absolutely. So this is a great thing for your board members, particularly they say the reluctant of getting involved in fundraising. Ask them to make a 2-minute thank you call to donors of different sizes. We were talking about collaboration. You know, our foundations, corporations, individual philanthropists are being overwhelmed. And we're saying one of the best ways of collaboration is making joint requests. And this is a time both the nonprofits that are making the request, your chances go up because you're going to make the job of responding yes easier for the funder. This is just a great time. I'll tell you what, we're moving at a great pace here, and I want to get this on, and then Michael, I want to check if we have any questions, okay?
Absolutely. Well, thank you, everyone, and thank you, Jim. This has been very helpful, and I think.
By the way, I'm going to give you a chance, a little brag about AFP right here.
Oh yeah, no problem. So AFP. So for those of you who are familiar with AFP, and for those of you who aren't, AFP, the bottom line is we are there to help support nonprofits. We're there to help support professionals to help them to reach their full potential, to raise the money they need to achieve their mission. This has been a year of change for AFP. And one of the things we're really focusing on at AFP is about what are the needs of the members. And so we've transitioned a lot of things virtually, and we're asking a lot of questions, and we're trying to design our programs to help answer those questions that you may have that you may not know where to find an answer to. And so I think, as nonprofits look at, what organizations they want to keep, I think it's really important to look at service organizations and organizations like AFP because of the value that they can bring. And also AFP has a huge list of items that you can get virtually that you can download at any given time.
And I can't say how much, being a 30-year AFP member, simply, I can assure you, the other AP members, they might work for larger organizations, different missions, but you all share the same headaches and the same, joys. There's so much that you can gain. And by the way, knowing someone makes it so much easier. We're going to have management that's going to ask for benchmarks and comparing other organizations. And when you know someone through AFP, it's so much easier to get information than if you don't have a personal relationship.
Yeah, Jim, you're exactly right. It's about those relationships, and sometimes those relationships that you build with all other professionals can be invaluable in your career and your success as a professional fundraiser. The last thing here, Jim, that I just wanted to mention is uncompromised ethics. This is a tough time for nonprofits. Some nonprofits are looking at their budgets, trying to figure out what to do. Sometimes it seems like the easiest answer would be to cut corners on something that that you shouldn't be cutting corners on. And the thing is I can tell you, Jim, from an AFP perspective and also from a nonprofit perspective, is that it's important to always think long-term and always focus on giving uncompromised ethics and doing the right things at the right time, even if it's not going to help you in the short term.
Yeah. Well, it's funny you said that. I had him as a guest, I don't know, about 7 weeks ago. One of my mentors was Larry Baklovic, who's a partner with Daney Partners out of Houston.
Yeah.
And he kind of, I think this was 20 years ago, he kind of showed me what a consultant could do and excite a board, excite a staff, elevate. But also he was living proof. There was nobody that was more fiercely ethical and fiercely competitive. I think being ethical strengthens your grounding to have big dreams and to reach harder and to go after the yes. So I think success and ethics go hand in hand. Michael, do we have any questions in the queue? By the way, Aaron, we're doing great in time.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I don't see any questions currently, and it doesn't look like there's anybody raising their hand either.
Well, we'll keep on moving, and I'm going to bring you in.
Actually, before we go any further, Gene actually just raised their hand. So do you want me to bring them in?
Gene, come on screen. I know this, Gene. Gene, how you doing? Gene, how are you doing?
Okay, good. Can you hear me okay?
Gene, can you do me a favor? Tell us a little about the Bowen Center.
All right, thanks. I'm a board member of the Bowen Center for Neighborhood Advocacy. And this is an organization started by former County Commissioner Tommy Atkinson because he believes in the importance of neighborhoods. And the purpose, the mission of the organization is to uplift neighborhoods by providing education for neighborhood leaders and to advocate on neighborhood issues with the city or county. And I've got I just love this statement that you made. There are no board seats to waste. Here's a couple of things that happen, which I would like to get your reaction. We put in a rule or a resolution that board members should kick in at least $250 a year, or bring in from other donors that they know, which actually that everyone did not comply with that. And then that statement, there are no board seats to waste. We got into a situation where the board kind of got loaded up with 2 or 3 people who were in the pocket of the executive director at the time and went along with that person's agenda. And here's the problem, that as board members, they had a vote. So I wanted to ask, what do you think of creating some other leadership group, like a steering committee or something, where the founder and, let's say, a small board keeps control, but you involve other people who are, let's just call them committee members or something, so that they don't try and take over. That's what was happening.
Okay, Gene, I'll tell you the deal that Aaron and I worked out ahead of time. If it was a tough question, he was going to handle it. If it was an easy one right down the pike, I would handle it. Aaron, this sounds like a tough one, but I will follow up your comment.
Okay, so first of all, thanks for sharing that. As you were sharing that, I guess one of the first things I thought about is this idea of an advisory board. I don't know if that came to your mind as well, Jim, but advisory boards are always a good option because advisory boards, they would probably meet quarterly. They'd meet less often. They could still be there as advocates for your cause. But in my experience, advisory boards would not necessarily have the same voting ability as your typical board of directors. So that was one of the things that was on my mind. Jim, what do you think?
I have 2 thoughts. Number one, Gene, I think it really depends on the size of your board, because if you have a board that's 10 or less, I question the need for a steering committee or an advisory board. That's a pretty small group. And by the way, I think sometimes it's not the size of the dog, but the fight in the dog. And so if you have 10 fully committed people that are moving in the same direction, I think you can achieve amazing results, because I'm speaking from 30 years of experience. A lot of your job is just kind of managing the board. And that's what I'm saying. But before, if you had board members who were just saying, oh, Aaron will handle the fundraising, you don't have to worry about that. I got to tell you, I heard that a million times, not Aaron's name, but other things. And I think now, because it's not just asking for the gift, but every board member can introduce people from their personal, professional, and civic networks, and they can introduce them to the mission. And when it comes time to ask for the gift, then you can bring in the dark bathers like myself and Aaron, and we'll ask for the gift. But Gene, by the way, there used to be the 3 W's for board requirement was work, wisdom, and wealth. And then the late Gerald Penn has changed it to the 3 G's: give, get, or get off. Okay, so he wasn't subtle. He wasn't subtle. Anybody else there with questions? Good question, Gene. Thank you.
Okay.
It's your opportunity. How about Joel? Joel, you're never shy. Well, Aaron and I will keep on going. Well, I'll tell you what, Aaron, and by the way, too, I had a fondness from the beginning for Aaron because I love his name. I want everybody to type in. I know of 2 people that have the middle name Aaron. One person is very important, and he's deceased, but he was very important to the world. And another person is very important, at least to my wife. My middle name is Aaron, and Elvis Aaron Presley has the middle name. I got to tell you, it was like 20 years ago, and I went to Graceland, which is a wonderful tour there. And I saw her on his tombstone. Oh my God, he's the first person I met that had the same middle name. So we're talking, and by the way, Michael, if anybody comes with some questions, we'll take them in here, but we're going to keep right going.
It looks like
I would say-
Joel has actually just raised their hand if you want me
Okay,
to
Joel,
bring him in right now.
Joel, bring him on the screen. We missed Joel.
Allow him to talk.
Joel, how's everything
right.
in the Metroplex?
Great. That's okay. Here's my comment.
Okay, question or comment?
It's a comment.
Oh, good. I can respond to those. It was a tough question. I would have to get.
No, this is a comment.
Okay, sure.
Gentlemen, the most important thing in communications is to hear what isn't being said.
Sorry, can you repeat that?
The most important thing in communications is to hear what isn't being said.
Amplify. I like that. I'm going to steal that one.
You want to steal it?
Explain that. Explain that. Explain that a little more.
Peter Drucker said it. I didn't make it up. Peter Drucker.
Yeah.
Oftentimes, what's not being said, body movements, hands, and all that. That's why the virtual fundraising, we don't see the body movements, the hands, the expressions. But oftentimes, they're the most important thing in communications.
I got to tell you, as someone who spent 30 years going to people's offices and homes, and Aaron, I know what your experience is. You know, this is the way a fundraiser mind works. I look for the photos. I look for the books. I look for the mementos, the posters. That would give some much more insight, you know, into some of the motivations of the individual. I'm hoping we can come up with 3D Zoom that you can look around. I don't know what you're really. I mean, and also it's just when you saw some beautiful grandchildren or you saw something from a university, you know, you could ask a question and I could tell by the way the donor's face would light up, that was something that was important to them.
Well, and I think it kind of goes back to this idea too of even if we have donors who don't want to do a virtual, meeting, but they want to do a phone call, is I think it was a great idea. What you said is just listening behind the words, right? So like, when are they pausing? Are they excited? Are they scared? Are they frustrated? Like all of those things you can listen beyond the words to just understand where they're coming from.
Right. Joel, very good comment. And remember, you still have a homework assignment to complete. He is recruiting our nonprofit colleague from Jerusalem, Meyer, I won't give his last name, to join us. It's only 11 p.m. You know, what else? You know, it's a late dinner. Any other questions, or we'll keep moving on here?
So, so we've got one person who just typed a question. I'll ask that, but we've actually got, there's never mind. They just raised their hand. So I'm going to do Ed right now, and then Gene has another question. So I'm going to go ahead and unmute Ed here, and then we'll unmute Gene right after.
Okay, well, we heard. Hey, Ed, welcome to the learning community.
All right. All right. You should be able to talk now, Ed.
Oh, I know that, Ed. He's too smart for me. Ed, how are you doing?
Great, Jim.
Hey, Ed, this guy is one of the smartest people in our profession. Aaron, I think you're getting this question. Okay.
Well, thank you, Jim. The feeling is mutual. And Aaron, it's great to see someone of your generation taking leadership. Yeah. So my question is about...
I would have insulted about that a while ago. But anyways, I can handle it.
Well, I just thought I'd give him, some kudos too, but, anyhow. So my question is about hunting for donor advised funds. We all know there are a bunch of them at San Antonio Area Foundation. They used to publish their list of those in their annual report. They haven't done that in a long time, but they should, they will respond to questions about that. Of course, Vanguard and others have these. Are there published lists? Are there, other accessible ways?
I want to go first in this because, and then I do want Aaron to get in. But yesterday, I reviewed a report. It was fascinating from the Lilly School of Philanthropy at Indiana University. And it was all about DAS. Okay.
Yeah.
And it basically said, so, I like to think that most of the fundraising is common sense, but it said the nonprofits that talked about DAFs with their donors and friends in some
Mhm.
way were
Mhm.
80% more likely to get a DAF gift.
Right.
And so I would start, I know the biggest one, I mean, it's astronomical, Ed. I mean, and we
Oh, yeah.
haven't seen it. Last year, and I think they're just going to surpass this. Last year alone, Fidelity awarded 7.3 billion. Okay.
Mhm.
Go
Right.
there. I think number 2 is Charles Schwab. So,
Mhm.
I mean, when you take a 10-minute break, I would be researching those big, find out their guidelines and learn about their activity levels.
Yep.
But
Yep.
DAFs to me they're the most dynamic component of philanthropy.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. They're very much at the top of my chart. You know, we've got many donors in our donor community who have DAFs at the area foundation, and we are receiving support from a number of them. But you know, we want to definitely increase that percentage. And you're right. You know, just talking to your donors and asking them, you know, do you by any chance have a DAF? You know, that's really one of the best ways simply to find out.
You want to know? It's not that complicated.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
you know, the folks. The thing is, too, they're getting some tension. You know, foundations have to award
Mhm.
5% of their income each year to
Right.
keep their IRS status.
Right.
And there has been a lot of talk by big philanthropists. Right now, Aaron and I can put a gazillion dollars on our DAF. We get a tax deduction when we put the
Right.
money in there, and it
Right.
doesn't have to move to a charity for like 30 years. So
Right.
they're getting a lot of, it's being called a giant parking lot. In fact, there's so much money there. I was trying to research that in front of the show. The only number I see is from last year, something like $121 billion in the DAF parking lot.
Right. Yeah. Part of the job is also getting to know the people who are the gatekeepers for those at those places. My experience is that some of those gatekeepers are kind of like watchdogs, and they're not like, you know, as friendly as you would like them to be. You know, they're sort of wanting to keep that money parked there.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
it takes some time, you know, to develop those
that's a
relationships.
good point. There we go.
So,
Relationship.
All right.
I just want to jump in real quick. So I remember a couple of years ago, I went to a United Way presentation, and the title was Demystifying Donor Advised Funds. And
Awesome.
it was packed, 200 people in the room
I
in
bet.
Houston. And the whole purpose was people were asking that exact question that you asked. And
Mhm.
everyone walked away confused because no one got the answer they were looking for.
Mhm. Mhm.
But,
Well,
but let me tell you, I think there are opportunities, and you've talked about that too, right? Just asking, you know, about it with your donors. But another thing I think is important is I wonder how many nonprofits actually give donor advised funds as an option for giving to the nonprofit. So
mhm.
I think
Right.
sometimes, you know, it just having it out there and having it as an option to give would
Right.
encourage people who already have a donor advised fund to maybe consider that as being part of their giving strategy.
Aaron, I want to ask your permission.
Absolutely.
Aaron, I want to ask your permission.
Yeah.
I'm going to steal that as my own idea. I love that. Give me a fist
That-
bump.
That's right. We
I
need to
love
put
that.
that on our website as
Yeah.
an option for giving.
I gotta tell you, folks. I
Yeah.
mean, $121 billion is like
Right.
in a parking lot.
Right.
And
Yep.
okay, we're wrapping up here, Michael. Any
Thanks,
other questions?
guys.
Thank you,
All right.
Ed.
Thanks, Ed.
Keep up the
Thank
good
you.
work.
Thanks,
I think-
Jim. Thank you, Aaron.
Michael,
So we've got, I know Gene had another question, and it looks like Bonnie also has a question. So I
I
think if
gotta
we just
tell you
get
what.
these last two questions.
can we get? Yeah, let's get. I mean, I admire Gene. We've heard from him once. Let's get Bonnie on there, okay?
Sure. All right.
Gene, don't take it personal, okay?
All right. Bonnie is in.
Bonnie, are you in Kerrville?
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Welcome, Bonnie. Welcome to our learning community.
Thank you. It's been a while. I've had to miss for several weeks. I was really just pushing buttons, and so I didn't exactly have a question, but now that I've been identified, I really do want to ask more about the donor advised funds. And maybe you answered it, but let me ask the question this way. So someone that is going to focus on donor advised funds, what are the first things that I should do come Monday morning? What should I be doing to make that the focus of the next couple of months and next year or two?
Aaron, I'm going to let you go first, and then I'm going to follow up because it's
Okay,
easier.
yeah, absolutely. So going back to my initial thought a second ago, I think one of the initial things that you can do related to donor advised funds is let your donors know that that is an option for giving. And so I would look at your website. I would make sure that you have something on there about donor advised funds. I'd make sure that you have it as a giving option. So for example, if you sent out an appeal, my guess is most appeals would just say, you know, pay via cash or credit card, but sometimes it's as simple as just including information about DAF and everything that you do. It's something about repetition, right? Like the more people see it, the more people will recognize it, and the easier it'll be for it to click and say, oh yeah, I have a DAF and I can do something about it. The other thing is I think it's about education. And it's about working with your fundraisers or working with the person who's out talking to your supporters and just bringing that up in conversations and letting them know that that's available and asking them the question, do they have a DAF? I mean, I guess those are a few basic things that they could work on.
I tell you, Aaron, you're good. But anyways, too, the other thing I would say, Bonnie, it's just like an estate gift or a gift of stock. People aren't excited about the vehicle. First, you get them excited about what the money will do.
Yeah.
And I think donating property, stock, a DAF extends their giving reach. So if you have a project that gets them real excited, say you need $50,000 and they look at you, Bonnie, I'm sorry, I think there's only 25 that we can commit at this time. I think then you want to explore, could there be stock? Could be their DAF? Could there be a partial deferred gift through their estate? But these are ways where people, they don't get excited about the vehicle. You want to get them passionate about your vision and your mission.
So one more thing I just wanted to bring up is, in my experience, sometimes if you get money from a DAF, like from Fidelity, the check would come from Fidelity, and you may not even know who actually owns that DAF that gave that money. And so something else that I would encourage you to do, and they won't always do that, but I've seen them where they will, is reach out to the person, your point of contact, and say, hey, we would like to send a thank you note to that individual who gave. Could we get their contact information? And that's a perfect opportunity to build that relationship beyond just Fidelity, but now you have that relationship with the individual donor who really has control over the DAF.
Thank you, Aaron. Again, I'm going to have to say that because, Bonnie, Aaron is exactly right. Fidelity didn't make the decision to give your money, to give them the money. It was that donor that keeps a DAF at Fidelity, and that's who you really want to thank. So, Aaron, that was absolutely perfect. Gene, let's get Gene. Gene, I'll tell you what, you've been so consistent. We're going to be, for the first time, we're going to let someone ask the second question. Let's get Gene on. But we're only going to give you about a minute. Do we still have Gene?
Yes, he can talk now.
Okay, Gene, you're back. Gene, welcome back. I think he's back.
How's that? Did that work? Can you hear me?
Now we can hear you.
Okay. You put on the screen that fewer than 1/3 of all Americans have wills. That's a factoid that is just a shocker to me. But we've been discussing that in our organization because there's a problem for a lot of people who, they want to pass their houses when they pass away to their family and so forth. And the title is all screwed up and they end up in probate and all the children start arguing. So, I had never really seen that fact.
It's scary, but I'll tell you what, we have also never seen an increase in estate planning like we're seeing now because people, I hate to be blunt, but we're reminded about our own mortality and inability to control and predict the future. Yeah. We're going to wrap up here. I'm going to say, I love this quote, Aaron, from Maya Angelou, the poet. She said that people will not remember what you said. They won't remember what you did. They'll never forget what you did, how you made them feel. And our job in fundraising really is to make them feel like they're the most important person in the world. It's not hard or that simple. I give a money back guarantee to my clients. I don't know what you do, Aaron. And I tell them that their chances of getting the gift go way up when they ask.
Absolutely. And that's a simple thing, but a lot of people are afraid to do it. So I
Wow.
agree.
Oh, I gotta tell you, they keep on waiting for that perfect moment. And by the way, again, I always end on this quote. John F. Kennedy spoke these words given the commencement address at American University on June 10th, 1963. And Aaron, it gives me goosebumps because I think he's talking to us right now, October 28th, 2020. Our most basic common link is we all inhabit this small planet. We all breathe the same air. We all cherish our children's future. We're all mortal. I think President Kennedy was speaking to us right now. And I want to thank, first of all our learning partners. We had some excellent questions. And I want to thank you for the work you're doing in your communities to touch, improve, and save lives. I want to thank not John, but pretty close to John, Michael Argent. You had a great premier role as our producer. Thank you. And so you know what's next. We are going to post a very short written summary on LinkedIn and Facebook. And then we're going to let Michael do his magic, and he's going to get us the recording and the slides, and we're going to post that on Facebook and LinkedIn in about an hour or so. But let me too, I've got to know you a lot better through this process, and to like you as a person, and to admire your professional competence. And Aaron, again, you were way ahead of us. You know, if someone said virtual fundraising to me a year ago, I would say, you know nothing, okay? You started in 2013. You are a true pioneer. And I know that serving on the board and being president of our AFP, Association of Professional Fundraisers, Untitled Chapter, is a lot of time. So thank you for the leadership that you have provided to our profession. And I forgot to ask you the most important question. You have a large family. I think you said 5 children. How are the Javaners doing?
Jim, we are doing good. Last night, the kids went out for their first trunk or treat at the church, and so they're a little sugared up, but they're good.
Sugared up. Well, they're not alone. Hey, listen, we'll be in touch, Aaron. You did an amazing job. Thank you so much.
Thank
for
you,
the
everyone.
webinar.
Thank you, Jim.
And thank you for what you do for our community. Michael, I don't know if I want your dad back. Great job as producer. And we'll be looking probably for the link in another, whatever, hour or so.
Yes, that's correct. And thank you for letting me run everything today. It was fun.
Thank you. And we'll see everybody next week. Good night.
Bye,
Thanks,
everyone.
Aaron.
Thank you.
Thanks, Michael. Bye.